through the night. This Saturday, see Ireland take on Scotland. So why not give it your all? Answering Ireland's call. For reservations, email info@d2.ie. D2, the home of sports.
Home sweet home. Maybe it's in the middle of town or the middle of nowhere, or maybe you haven't found your home just yet. That's why our Bank of Ireland mortgage specialists cover the length and breadth of Ireland to meet you at a time that suits you best. Meet us in branch, in a coffee shop, or even in the little slice of country you call home to chat about your personal mortgage plans. Anywhere, anytime. Bank of Ireland. Begin. Lending criteria and terms and conditions apply. Security and insurance required. Over 18s only. Bank of Ireland Mortgage Bank, trading as Bank of Ireland Mortgages, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
For a limited time only, get Air's totally unlimited broadband for just $39.99 a month for 12 months. Sign up today and you'll also get Amazon Prime Video on us for a whole year. Watch thousands of popular movies, TV episodes and award-winning Amazon originals. Plus, you'll get the free Air Sport Pack. For more on this amazing offer, call 1-800-500-300, go in store or visit air.ie. Air. Let's make possible. Price for new customers, 12-month contract, subject to availability. Bundle activation fee may apply. For full details and terms, see air.ie/Prime Video.
You ain't shit! I wish I was 50 years younger and I'd kick your ass.
Well, fans can be the harshest critics, you know.
And they often are.
A wife is often the harshest critic of her husband.
I thought I was invincible. That's what you're trained to believe as a sports person.
There was 4 million people in Ireland who knew much more about managing football teams than I did. When it comes to music, I can spoof with the best.
Your sporting career is the best time you'll have, and you know you have to hang on to it for as long as you like, because everything else is pretty crappy.
And this is not lies. Stephen Rochford has never spoken to Jimmy McGuinness in his life.
Welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk. John Duggan with you until 5 o'clock with the Saturday panel. 53106, the number for your text. We're also streaming live now as well. You can get in touch with us on Off the Ball social channels, on Twitter at Off the Ball, on YouTube, on Facebook, and also listen on the Go Loud app. On day one of the 2020 Six Nations Championship, we're delighted to be joined on our Saturday panel to talk rugby over the next hour with Ian Dowling, a former Irish international and twice European Cup winner with Munster, Ruaidhri O'Connor, the rugby correspondent of the Irish Independent, and Mark Palmer, the Scotland rugby correspondent with the Sunday Times. Remember, our rugby coverage brought to you by Vodafone. Team of us, everyone in, lads. We all excited?
Yeah, looking forward to it.
This is going to be great, isn't it? So Ireland kicking off against Scotland at 4:45 at Lansdowne Road. Then we have Wales and Italy in Cardiff from 2:15. England and France in Paris tomorrow. Six Nations for me, lads, all about Fred Cogley on TV, brown balls, Noel Mannion's try, winning in Wales but nowhere else, getting hammered everywhere else, just the kind of grainy footage from France, and then in more recent years, Triple Crowns, the odd Grand Slam, the rituals with your friends, away trips and maybe romantic breaks or trips with the lads to France and to Rome. Ian, what's your kind of Six Nations memory or thought or kind of feeling when it comes into your head?
I suppose we have a few, but the most prominent ones are like the day trips with Kilkenny Rugby Club up to the schoolboys' corner and like the old Lansdowne Road, to just play a match before, then heading into Lansdowne Road to watch the game. So that was pretty special.
Do you remember your first one?
No, I'd be lying if I said otherwise. But and then just seeing Jonah Lomu in action, then was fairly. I think it was pitch side for him, so that was pretty impressive. Then I suppose another memory would have been Paul O'Connell's first cap for Ireland.
It was against Wales, was it? The Six Nations was against Wales. I think we hammered them in 2002, yeah.
Again, it was just him just walking down the touchline though, crying after coming off. I think it was a concussion or something like that. Yeah, so like those kind of snapshots in time stand out for us. So it's always a great competition though.
Mark, it's 1st of February. The dry January is over for a lot of us. The dry February begins. But you're on the plane this morning. Were you many Scottish fans? Any kind of familiar faces? Have they got the kilts on?
There's plenty of kilts, plenty of familiar faces, and plenty of alcohol as well. Not for myself.
Dry January's over.
It is. Tell my employers that. But no, there's certainly a few taking full advantage of things being open early this morning. So I expect to be lively later on as well.
They're not the best travellers in the Six Nations Scotland from a results perspective. But this is really what it's all about. We know that the same. We've got trips to France and England to look forward to. It really is a a part of everybody's ritual. 53106 folks out there, what is your Six Nations ritual? Rory, for you, what was your first Six Nations memory?
I think the Six Nations, or Five Nations as it was when I was a kid, it was a bit of a gateway drug into rugby, because I grew up in a kind of a general sports family. My dad was big into the GAA and football, and rugby just kind of was this thing that happened for 2 months every year. But he made friends with a group of Welsh guys in the hut in Fisborough in 1979, I think, and they've basically been going over and back, staying with each other every year. So every year we get 2 or 3 Welsh lads staying in the house, and we would go over to them and stay with them in Caerphilly or in St. Ended near Caerphilly, and that was it was about friendship. I think for a lot of people, Six Nations is about friendship as much as anything, and the ritual and the tradition of it. I remember when at college we discovered this double step on the North Terrace of Lansdowne Road, so a gang of us from UCD Rugby Club would go and stand on this double step, and it became a real thing. That was our adult kind of entry into it. And now it's all about kind of it's the time of year, apart from the World Cup every 4 years, and I'm sure Mark can identify this, where your readers are really engaged with you, that people are really, really into rugby, that your general sports fan who probably parked it after the disastrous World Cup.
Or the Masters for rugby right now?
A little bit. I mean, it's an 8-week job, so it's a bit more, it's not as intense as all of that, but definitely, I mean, it's so significant. I was before I went into journalism, I was in Cardiff the day they won the Grand Slam in 2009 as a fan, and it was an incredible place to be. So it's, I mean, for all that the World Cup is the real big deal, there's something special about the Six Nations, and it's probably dulled a little bit in the post-World Cup year, but it's still pretty important, and it's still very important to go out there and win it.
Always a set at Murrayfield as well recently, and
yeah, they've been doing really well actually. They've managed to push that and get some big crowds that hadn't been there in previous years. It's just trying to crack this away day hoodoo, which has become the real theme of it in the last number of years. Obviously not won in Dublin since 2010, and Cardiff since 2002, Paris and London even further back. So that's become the real challenge at the moment.
You played for Ireland, Ian, not in the Six Nations. Was it disruptive for Munster when you've lads going in and out of camp and that kind of thing?
Yeah, it can be, no doubt. But I think after one of the World Cups, we had such a good bond by the time the players came in, for the rest of the squad, that if you can get results when the internationals are away, it really does breed confidence within the squad. And I think when you look at Leinster, since the players have come back from the World Cup, the Leinster squad have kind of reinvigorated maybe those internationals that have returned.
Would that actually help? Is the form of the provinces going to make the World Cup more in the rearview mirror, Rory, going into the Six Nations? In your view,
I don't think the World Cup will. I think the World Cup will be a clear and present, clear presence throughout the Six Nations. It is the last time Ireland played. It didn't go very well. I'm sure the Scots, it went even worse for the Scots, so it'll be there for them as well. I don't think there's redemption on offer in the next 2 weeks. Even Johnny Sexton has said that really they can only achieve World Cup redemption in 4 years' time, but it certainly can get them moving in the right direction again. I think the form of the provinces, I think the fact that they had a really, really long pre-season this year, they kind of came back the same time as the Ireland players, but they didn't kick off the Pro 14 until much later, and I think you can see it in the physical shape that a lot of them come back in. Say Caelan Doris making his debut today looks in really, really unbelievable nick, and when the Ireland players came back, they kind of had to fight for their places again, so it helped them kind of move on very quickly, because there was no point in dwelling on what had just gone, because they needed to get their jersey back and then be able to get back into the Ireland squad, because there's no point. Look at, say, Rob Kearney came back and couldn't get back into the Leinster team and now can't get in the Ireland squad.
Is it new enough for you, Ian, after the World Cup? We've Andy Farrell there, new head coach, new captain Johnny Sexton, some new players, Caelan Doris coming in. Joe Schmidt did a great job, won 3 titles, won a Grand Slam, but maybe at the end it came a little bit samey, maybe a bit too obsessive, and maybe we just needed a few new voices in there. I know Andy Farrell was there as a number 2, but he is the number 1. Is it new enough for you? Is it fresh enough for you today?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and for me, 2018 really against the All Blacks in the Aviva, that was nearly the perfect performance. I thought that's Joe Schmidt. He if he was to plan victory, that's exactly it. Couldn't have gone any better. But then that first match in against England, Six Nations, Henshaw was full-back, wasn't he? And he tried a bit of variety there. But then it seemed from that game forward, there was nearly a sense of fear, a sense of panic that kind of set in, and they tried harder and harder and harder. And then all of a sudden, from when they went into camp to the World Cup, there was so many niggly injuries, a lot of muscle injuries. Landed in Japan, Henshaw was a hamstring, then popped the hamstring So they're kind of signs, and the performances were flat there. So I don't think we got a real view on Schmidt. So then now we have Andy Farrell coming in, we have Mike Catt jumping in as attack coach, and Simon Easterby going to defence coach. So there's enough variety now within that kind of that squad from a coaching squad. But then when you look at the kind of senior leaders in Murray, Sexton, 9 and 10, and you have then I suppose James Ryan and CJ Stander from the back row point of view. I think there's enough variety, but it's probably going to take maybe the next bones of a month for us to see, okay, what's the real change in terms of the game plan.
How fresh has it felt for you, Rory? You were in Portugal this week with Andy Farrell's camp. Are you seeing enough, new in Irish rugby? Was it required?
I think after, what was it, 6 years of Joe Schmidt, I think he did 6 Nations campaign. I think there is definitely a need for change, and given the way last year went and how stale it kind of felt towards the end, there was definitely a need for change. I think people probably have noticed that people have been writing about teams being named on different days and music being played at training and stuff this week, but that's because we've no rugby to talk about. We haven't seen what Andy Farrell's team looks like.
Was the music
so
good?
More, Little Nas was blaring out with me for me, but Old Town Road, that was blaring out of training. I think it was the fact that the music was on. I think the music was taken away at some point during the previous regime, but was back on the sidelines in Portugal blaring out as they were doing warm-up work with AFL balls and slitters, hurling balls and footballs, and just doing reaction work. There was nothing really revelation around like that, but it was just, it looked and sounded a little bit different. Farrell's very different to Schmidt. I mean, I don't think he's taken. I think Andy Farrell, what he's done is he's taken a bit from every coach he's worked with, like Gatland, Schmidt, Eddie Jones, Mark McCall, Stuart Lancaster. Like, that's some amount of good hands to have been through, and probably a couple of some really good rugby league coaches as well that I wouldn't be as familiar with. And he's come in now with all of those ideas, all the good things from those coaches, but he's also seen the bad things and the things that kind of lead to tension in the ranks, and he's trying to apply it. And it sounds good week one, but we haven't seen his team play. So we can analyse it as much as we want, but if they go out today and they're flat, or they go out today and they play like they did in 2019, suddenly it doesn't matter that he named his team on a Tuesday, or that it was music playing at training, or all that stuff that sounded good and looked good during the week. This is where we judge them.
Goal between Leicester and Chelsea at the King Power. This is Derek Clark.
Leicester City 0, Chelsea 1. It took the visitors just 40 seconds after the restart to take the lead here. It was a corner kick into the back post, and there was Antonio Rudiger to nod the ball past Kasper Schmeichel into the corner of the net to make it Leicester City 0, Chelsea 1.
Mark, we'll talk about Finn Russell Gate and Scotland's IPAN and all that in a second. But you're neutral. You're coming in here. You don't have any axe to grind or any kind of agenda. If you're looking at Ireland right now, what's your kind of view, or your kind of assessment of Ireland?
Really intrigued to see what Andy Farrell does as a head coach, because
he's never been one.
Nobody knows, and it's very different. Obviously, being that number 2, and he's done it successfully in a number of roles. But when it's your show and everything's on you, that's obviously a completely different vibe. We expect, the expectation would be that the defensive structures won't change massively, given that he's been in charge of those. But that evolution in attack is going to be fascinating to see what happens there, and whether they expand their horizons a bit more, and if they need to do that, I don't know what the feeling would be, but that's the side of it that fascinates me.
Ian, Rory was talking about balls and slitters as AFL balls. You've been involved in Tipperary GA in the last few years as a physio. What can rugby maybe learn from the amateur game of GA regarding the way they do things, preparation? Is there anything that rugby could benefit from, given you've been a European Cup winner with Munster, you've worked in Tipperary GA, you've been in All-Ireland semi-final, that maybe rugby could benefit from the GA world?
I think it's just that it's hard to say pick on one point, but I suppose in terms of it's just making it enjoyable, and I think that's the big focus maybe for this week. Again, for everybody, it seems from an Irish point the camp point of view, they're determined to get on the good side with the media, or develop relationships again there. But like, say when we went on, or when the Tip footballers went on the run to the semi-final, it was the nights out afterwards. It was celebrating the kind of wins, because they're so hard to come by, and particularly for Tip football at that time. And I think though that just holds true for all sports, that perhaps the fun out of the game and the rugby with the Irish camp in that last year had just kind of gone from the game for them, you know. But it's hard to compare the two, given the sacrifices the amateurs have to make. I mean, like for the tip footballers, there's guys like leaving work early, trying to scramble to getting a train from Dublin to come down, to get onto the pitch for 7:45, barely getting back into the dressing room to grab food, grab a shower, and then get back on the train. And so, like, the luxuries of a professional life in terms of day-to-day planning and rugby or professional sport being your one focus during the day, it's hard. You definitely admire and respect the game more if you're an amateur, like in the GA, where they're kind of working 9 to 5 and then trying to compete at the top level of a sport.
So did you have that at Munster as well? Did you feel when you were playing for Declan, when you won those European Cups, that there was always that valve, you could release that valve of enjoyment?
Yeah, but I felt towards the end it was starting to creep out, and there was more focus particularly for Heineken Cups, we always had it. It was like we'd all go out and we'd celebrate together after nights out, and quarterfinals, there might have been a rollover, a second day of celebrations, and there was conscious effort, 2 camps where it was Cork and Limerick, we'd kind of come together maybe and celebrate mark those occasions. And it's so important, the more I look back on celebrating those victories, and the semi-final run with the tip footballers, that was done, you know, like the Tuesdays, training sessions after was more kind of just dust off the cobwebs, try to get the lads moving again. Thursday would be a bit sharper, but for me, definitely towards the end of the playing career, probably eked out. And I think there was one in particular where I can't remember it was either quarter-final or semi-final, where I was having a second day session because it was we made a lot of sacrifices to get the win, but there wasn't that same buzz. It was more on the recovery side. So yeah,
more process based.
Yeah.
Text in here on 53106. What's your Six Nations ritual, folks? How excited are you about the championship? Where do you see Ireland finishing? Is it more about 2023? All that kind of thing. We're going to talk about that in the next hour on the Saturday panel. Lads, enough with the Schmidt fawning. The ends justify the means, and the end was an unmitigated failure. So that sums up the Schmidt era. Let's move on. That's from Paddy. Rory, Caelan Doris, will he have lots of enjoyment today going into this? Will he be so excited about being a debutant in the Ireland Six Nations?
I don't know. I mean, Ian probably knows more about preparing for your... Well, no, he does know more about preparing for your international debut than I do. I presume he'll be quite nervous. It's it's not making. He's not on tour somewhere in the middle of nowhere. He is in the there'll be a million people watching this game today. Just in Ireland alone, there's a massive focus on him. He is a debutant, but he's the kind of kid who was born to play at this level. He's been talked about. He's a very interesting story. He's from Lacken, a small village in County Mayo, about 20 minutes from Ballina. He started playing for Ballina Rugby Club. His parents are both from Dublin, and they sent him to Blackrock as a boarder. And at 15, he won a senior cup for Blackrock, which doesn't happen with many young kids. At that point, people were already talking about him as one for the future that would go straight into the Leinster Academy. He was a star of an under-20 team for 2 years. Made his Leinster debut last season. Leinster kind of used him well. They kind of brought him in. I think he made his debut against Connacht at the tail end of the previous year. They kind of dripped him in and out of the team last year. He didn't get a huge amount of senior exposure in terms of the big Heineken Cup games, but he got a lot of experience. And now this year, in the World Cup year, he's been one of their best players. He's physically built for it. He looks like a phenomenal athlete. He's a footballing number 8 in the mould of, say, Kieran Reid or Jamie Heaslip. The potential for this guy is very, very big, and it's nice that he has an interesting backstory, because a lot of the time you're writing about a guy who was good in St Michael's and then got into the Leinster Academy and then played for Leinster and played for Ireland, and it's not that interesting. His dad once spent
Ian was still Kenny Hurler.
Absolutely, that's more of that.
Wasn't good enough for Kenny Hurling.
His dad once spent 40 days and 40 nights on Croagh Patrick. He was the artist in residence for Mayo County Council, so more of that sort of thing. But he's obviously lived an interesting life, but he's a very, very good rugby player, and he's born for this level.
Nick Haney is welcome in number 8 in the Scottish back row. Many unusual tales, or is it more like you go to Glasgow, you go to Edinburgh, and you've got a fast track to general? Is it a school situation? What's the pathway in Scottish rugby?
Nick Haney's got another one who's an exception to the rule, in that he's Aussie born, was released by Western Force 6 years ago, struggling to make any kind of headway. has come over. He was at Bristol last year, picked up by Edinburgh in the summer. Really impressed in that World Cup window where a lot of their back rows were away, guys like Bill Mata, Bradbury, Hamish Watson, Jamie Ritchie. And Scotland have lacked that real kind of ball-carrying thrust in the back row. Although they've had some very good flankers, it's been that real kind of dynamic presence they've missed. The coaches feel that he can bring that, and that's why he's there. Also Scott Cummins in the second row and Rory Sutherland in the front row. It's a bit more kind of carrying power in there.
We got a goal between Leicester and Chelsea with Derek Clark.
Leicester City 1, Chelsea 1. The home side draw level here through Harvey Barnes. The ball was played out to him over on the left-hand side. He cut inside and fired a right-footed effort towards goal. It took a wicked deflection and then found a way into the back of the net. It's Leicester City 1, Chelsea 1.
And we told you on Off the Ball Saturday here on Newstalk that Shaqan Purcell was a banker in that Grade 1 Dublin chase at Leopardstown, and the truth is that Shaqan Purcell has won. 6-5 favourites, Min second at 7-4, Ornu at third at 66-1. We're talking about Caelan Doris and pressure and all that kind of thing today, lads. Conor Murray, Ian, should he be in the team, and what does he need to do to keep himself in the team?
Yeah, that's actually from regardless of the conditions or the game plan today.
Bit of rain, bit of wind.
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to actually seeing Conor. I'd love to see him just pick and go more, be more of a run option. I don't know if it was just a habit, but he was just once the ball was there, he was always looking to pass, and opposition defences haven't really been respecting him as a threat himself, and he is a natural threat, and I think when he's playing his best rugby, it's when he's looking for that sniping run, because it's such an easy win because he's so hard to kind of deal with. He's quite physically imposing, so I'd like to see a bit more from him as a run option first. His passing, we know what he can do, in his kicking game. For me, like if he develops or just goes back to that run game as well. I don't think Cooney can compete with him with Murray at that same level.
Do you see the thinking behind this, Rory?
I do, yeah. I mean, I would have been one of the people calling for John Cooney to get into the team. At the same time, there seems to be a bit of an extreme to this debate where people seem to think that if you...
There's extremes with everything. If you try Parrott to be the Ireland team...
Yeah, I know. And I'm probably spending too much time on social media as well. But there seems to be people out there, like he's kind of become the Rob Kearney now, that Rob Kearney's moved on, that when he's picked in the team, people just go mad. No one's saying Conor Murray should be dropped forever. That I just think that Cooney's reform should be rewarded, and that would send a really good message to the rest of the squad to say, even if you're Conor Murray, if this guy's playing better than you, you're not guaranteed your spot. And the message that sends to Conor Murray is, I need to play better, and the whole thing rises. I think Murray actually has played quite well in the last couple of weeks, and has and Cooney's form has probably dropped off a little bit in those last couple of Ulster games, which is bad timing. He also picked up he picked up a concussion, which meant he had to go through the HIA protocols, which meant that he didn't train the whole week in Portugal, which gave Conor Murray a bit of a head start, which always helps when you're going for selection. But Murray is unbelievably experienced. He's been around the block for years. He's still a world-class player who hasn't been hitting his full potential in the last year as he comes back from that very serious neck injury. It certainly seemed to affect his confidence taking the ball to contact. I think it's affected his passing as well, but he seems to have strengthened in the last couple of weeks. And probably the clamour for Cooney, I mean, he couldn't avoid it. He knows that people are calling for him to be dropped. I think that probably has given them the kick that he didn't actually need to be dropped. So I can understand the thinking. I think the conditions... I think it's actually going to... It's a good selection for the day that's turned out to be, because I think Murray will thrive in these conditions, albeit playing a game that people... I think anyone who was expecting Ireland to throw the ball around a lot, that drizzle that's happening outside has probably put a stop to that kind of more expansive game plan, and that's going to be a bit... Farrell will get criticism for not expanding the game, but you got to play the conditions as well, because winning is very important.
More things change the more they say the same, Mark. How damaging is this Finn Russell gate for Scotland?
Very, certainly at this point, before we see what Adam Hastings can do stepping into those big shoes. But certainly, if there's one player that you'd say is the least replaceable in that starting lineup, it's Finn Russell. And he's the very one that kind of through, not even through injury or anything like the natural like that, shall we say, is suddenly not present, so it can't be anything but damaging.
Has split the country.
Yeah, and to an extent, because we don't know the facts, then people are kind of forming their own conclusions, as always happens in this situation. But I think there's probably a bit of fault on both sides here, and all that we can say with certainty is that Scotland are a better team with Finn Russell in it, so there has to be a solution found and quickly to get him back out there.
I'm not convinced that Finn Russell can close out a game. So that's where, like, with Hastings coming in, I think it's good. I mean, like, if they're playing from behind and it's a win-win situation for him to throw the ball around. We know he's got incredible talent, but I don't think he can manage a game out. Maybe I'm being harsh. Am I? What?
Doesn't matter as much then for you as it could.
He hasn't had to do that as much.
Yeah,
He's had Greg
yeah,
there for him, but who is obviously not there now either. So that in itself, that will become more important for your standoff now. So it's a valid point, I think. Adam Hastings has had a really good season. The Pro 14 Champions Cup is making a lot better decisions with his kick-pass run. Certainly in Europe, he's been very good recently as well. So, he's probably primed to go in and do it, but they are big, big shoes to fill, certainly on an away day like this.
Yep.
His dad, Keith, was sacked as director of domestic rugby by the Scottish Rugby Football Union, Mark, and he won an unfair dismissal case. Is it possible relations may be strained between the whole family and Scottish rugby?
And they undoubtedly are, but I don't think that's a massive factor in this particular case, albeit, the SRU were trying to re-sign Finn at the point when all that was going down, and, whatever chance they had of hanging on to him with their limited financial reserves disappeared with that verdict as well. So it certainly doesn't help, but I wouldn't say it's a direct component of this incident.
Is Gregor Townsend under... He was under pressure with the World Cup, but is he under even more pressure now?
Definitely. I think, however you quantify it in terms of results, they've got 3 away games and their 2 home ones are against England and France, so not gimmies by any stretch. So whatever you define he has to do there, but certainly there needs to be a real sense of progression, of forward momentum again, which probably hasn't been the case since late 2018. A good first 18 months in the job, really picked up where Vern Cotter had left off, but the whole of the 2019 campaign was disappointing, both Six Nations and World Cup. So there's definite work to do there to regain that trust and that thrust as well.
Stuart Hogg put himself up. He wanted to be captain. He said he wanted to be captain. Is he the biggest threat for you, Rory, today? If he gets the ball?
I mean, as I said, it's raining, so the ball will be kicked to the backfield, and he's a dangerous man to kick to. And Ireland suddenly have a threat in the backfield now as well with Jordan Larmour, which is going to be interesting to watch. It's very hard to captain a game full back, though. I think that he'll need Johnny Gray to step up in the pack, I would imagine, and lead up in the tight. It's a really interesting just to see whether they're galvanised or split by it. I mean, Scotland it must be quite difficult to have two, like, Ireland have always had a Leinster and Munster issue in camp, not an issue as such, but there was that famous Enfield thing where pretty much the two provinces supply most of the team, but you've always had a smattering of Connacht and Ulster players, but to have only 2 clubs who are in competition all year, to bring them together must be a little bit of an interesting factor. And then you've got lads who've listened to Gregor Townsend for so long because he was their Glasgow coach as well. Bit of a parallel with Schmidt, and he is quite an intense character. So be interested to see whether they play for him or whether there's a few of them are going, what the hell are we doing here because Finn Russell's not here. There's got to be a couple of, like, how he galvanises that and how Stuart Hogg galvanises that dressing room is very interesting.
53106 for your text. We got one in from Des. The best thing to happen to Ireland's game plan is the ceiling of the indoor pitch at Abbottstown. We've also got a goal between Leicester and Chelsea from Derek Clark.
It's Leicester City 2, Chelsea 1. The Foxes turned the game on its head here, but Willie Caballero had followed, it has to be said. Chilwell played a crossing, Caballero went out to collect it. He was in no man's land, the ball was then cut back to Chilwell, and with the right foot, he fired it into the corner of the net to make it Leicester City 2, Chelsea 1.
This is Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk. 53106 for your text. Are you really excited about the Six Nations game today? How many points will Ireland thump Scotland by? What are your rituals for the Six Nations? Tell us about the hip flasks, the beef dinners, all this kind of stuff, the mates, the trips, all this kind of thing. And remember, our rugby coverage is brought to you with Vodafone. Team of us, everyone in. Back in a moment. Stay with us.
The Saturday panel on Off the Ball. Leading the way in the executive
thanks to the AA. You can find our lowest car insurance price online, guaranteed.
Some showers in parts of the country today, but it'll be dry with a few sunny spells in places. Highest temperatures 7 to 10 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
And this is Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk with John Duggan until 5 o'clock. You can text us on 53106. A goal in the Premier League between Leicester and Chelsea. An equaliser. Derek Clark.
It's Leicester City 2, Chelsea 2, and it's that man again, Antonio Rudiger, with a header, an absolute bullet header. This one, there was a free kick played almost to the edge of the area, and then he was the header into the top corner of the net to make it Leicester 2, Chelsea 2.
And it sounds like a beautiful South album with Hull losing 4-1 to Brentford. You can text us on 53106. You can tell us your Six Nations ritual ahead of Ireland-Scotland 4:45. How do you prepare for match day? You're really looking forward to it. How many points will Ireland thump Scotland by this afternoon? We're now streaming live as well. You can get in touch with us on the Off the Ball social channels, at Off the Ball on Twitter, on YouTube, on Facebook. You can listen as well on the Go Loud app on Off the Ball Radio. Part 2 of our Saturday panel. On the opening day of the Six Nations, February the 1st, we're joined in the company of Ian Dowling, the former European Cup winner with Munster, Kilkenny man, a former Irish international, Ruaidhri O'Connor, the rugby correspondent of the Irish Independent, and Mark Palmer, the Scotland rugby correspondent with the Sunday Times. Rory, the seedings issue. I was thinking myself, we've had a scandalous record at the World Cup going back 32, 33 years now. Never got past a quarter-final for a sport that's played by, 10 serious nations? This is me being critical of rugby just for a few seconds on this glorious day. So a lot of people will be thinking, you know what, Andy Farrell needs a chance. We need 4 years of preparation here to get to the World Cup. But then the seedings news comes out the other day. The seedings will be made after November internationals. We're currently 5th. So does that in any way diminish the need to experiment? We have to win these matches now.
I think it probably clarifies that. Yeah, I think you don't want to slip out of that top 8 anyway, and you definitely want to be in that top 4 if you can. It's a very difficult fixture list. I mean, the Six Nations is tough. Italy aside, we don't know what Franco Smith is going to bring there, but you would expect to win that one. Then you've got 2 games in Australia. There's a chance of a third, but it sounds like it's not going to happen. So 2 games in Australia, then South Africa, Australia and Japan in November. So there's very few gimmies there, but there are a lot of chances to pick up ranking points because you get more points for beating teams ranked above you. I mean, we all thought we had a great draw at the last World Cup, so you can read too much into what teams will be like in 3 years' time. But I do think by avoiding New Zealand, South Africa and England, who are likely to be the 3 big seedings, everyone's probably vying for that one spot. You're giving yourself more of a chance. It's just sensible. But you could still end up with a very good team in your pool. It's not guaranteed of anything. But Ireland do need to... I think Andy Farrell, because he's part of the old regime, needs a winning start anyway to give himself a bit of breathing space, a bit of momentum. The players need a bit of feel-good because they've been heavily criticised.
Well, you come under big pressure because the Schmidt era did not end well, and people have got short memories, as well as he did winning Six Nations titles. There seems to be a public... We live in an outrage era now. There's a public hangover about these kind of things that if Farrell doesn't win, immediately the pressure will be on. I'm not saying the media will put it on, but immediately it'll be, oh my God, it's a disaster. Does that put more pressure on him given what's happened and he was number 2 to Schmidt? I think any coach needs a good start because I mean he's a bit of an unknown quantity. I think rugby people know him, but I think and people who grew up watching sport or grandstand back when they saw him playing for Wigan might have an idea of him, but he's a bit of an unknown quantity because it's first head coach role. He is a continuity candidate, and the continuity is from a regime that struggled in the last year after an era of unprecedented success. So yes, I think the pressure will come on. I don't think people will be calling for his head, but I do think it makes everything more difficult. It makes every call that you make much kind of investigated and interrogated to a much greater degree. If he wins his first 2 home games, he gives himself a bit of breathing space. He's got, if you win at 3 home games in the Six Nations, you've pleased the people who go to the Aviva Stadium. You've given yourself a chance against England and France. If he goes into that final game against France away from home with a chance of winning the Six Nations, I think he's done a decent job. He goes off to Australia. The Euros is on at the same time. No one will really be paying attention. November is November, and he's given himself a year to start bringing players through, to bring in his own ideas. You lose against Scotland today, you're on the back foot straight away. The pressure is on for Wales next week. That's sport. That's professional sport. They were world number 1 team and going to the World Cup last year. They're down to 5. I think if they lose today, they're down to 7. That starts bringing pressure as well. So there is
the Six Nations is there to be won, and I think Ireland should be considered contenders, and a defeat today will put a serious bit damage in its regime at the start.
Ian, I'm sure players don't look very much beyond. I know we talk in kind of macro and visionary and helicopter terms, but for players, I'm sure it's just about today and then Wales next week, and they're not even thinking about Wales yet.
Yeah, I think, and that seems to be the message coming from the camp very much so. From with like, I think I read during the week from Johnny Sexton, he was keen to hammer that.
Got the haircut.
Got the haircut, looking sharp. Yeah, but
higher and tighter every time I see it.
But yeah, I think it's very much about that in terms of probably getting the forwards on the front foot and do whatever it takes to get the win today. I suppose we've touched on Finn Russell been out. Ireland, what they've won 10 of the last 11 times they've played Scotland, so that record alone kind of...
Tactically, what are the keys for victory for you today?
I suppose it depends on the conditions, but I would like to see a bit of Schmidt's strike plays, but I'd like to see a bit more of the Lancaster way of maintaining or generating quick ball again.
Will Mike Cap bring that?
Well, they have, like, I suppose it's not like, I suppose the coaching community within Ireland and even between Cat, Farrell and Lancaster, like, they've all worked together, haven't they?
2015 with England, yeah.
Yeah, so like no doubt they're like definitely I imagine it'll be a lot easier implement the game plan that he wants to implement here in Ireland, having Lancaster here as to what he was trying to achieve with Italy.
Dan Parks, 10 years ago, long time since Scotland won here. What does Scotland need to do, in your view, Mark, to beat Ireland today?
Well, yeah, many things, probably starting with praying, but we've been long asking for them to develop a second style, or certainly introduce more pragmatism to the way they play under Gregor Townsend. He came in with this ticket of wanting to play the fastest rugby in the world, which has become a bit of a millstone around his neck because it's such a grand statement to make anyway, but they've tended to kind of want to play that wide game at all costs, and then when they come up against an opponent who doesn't want to let them play like that, they've struggled to then have anywhere to go. So again, I think that's probably reflected in some of the decisions that he's made in that pack, particularly to try and have somewhere else to go, to have a power game to go to as well, and also to be able to resist that power game. Defence, which had been a strong point previously last year, really kind of fell off as well. They've got a new defence coach in Steve Tandy, so they haven't had much time to adapt to his systems, but they'll want to see an instant sort of improvement on that front.
It's funny to hear Scotland talking about, they want to be more pragmatic, and everyone in Ireland's just like, we need to go like fast and loose. It's we're going to meet somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
To me, the World Cup, Ireland murdered Scotland up front.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't that happen again today?
A good question. They have made a number of changes, I suppose. There's only, I think, there's 10 changes from that. From I think it's a Japan game actually, which was also a loss at the end. But they've got some decent form amongst that front five as well. The guys that come from their club game, partnerships as well. Johnny Gray and Scott Cummins in the second row. So I think there is a recognition that there has to be a bit more dog and a bit more devil about them, and hopefully we'll see that from a Scottish player.
Well, Brian O'Driscoll was saying that during the week. We don't have enough dog.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you wonder whether he just wanted to...
You need to bring dogs into the studio here.
we need more forwards from Limerick, is basically, and there's none coming through. Although there was the guy from Waterford playing for Hearn was playing for the 20s last night. He looks ready.
Jack O'Sullivan
Jack O'Sullivan looks ready as well. So I think in a couple of years they'll come through. But for now, I think the big difference between the game in Yokohama and tomorrow is and today is the fact that Rory Best is not there, and Rob Herring is in, and that Ulster line-out has really struggled in over the last, especially at big moments, because that was a real day where Ireland took every chance they got in the 22. They every time they went to it, kicked the ball into the corner, they scored off it, and basically the game was over before Scotland really got their hands on the ball. There's no guarantee of that security of possession today, and that's the big fear for Ireland.
Yeah, James Ryan as well now, like between himself and Henderson calling the lineouts, so that's going to be a bit of a challenge. Like we've seen them struggle in the past, and like I said, like Rob Herring. So it'll be interesting to see then as well. Ronan Kelleher coming off. Well, if he does get the chance to come off the bench, but that's the one area. Possibly Peter O'Mahony as well is out. So a good lineout option, or kind of nearly a default go-to if the lineout is struggling, that he isn't there now. So that's, like you say, one area that Scotland can target. Scrum, not sure really, given how strong the Irish front row is.
Will Stander make a difference at 6 now? How will he? Because he's a man, once again, that's people are saying is under a little bit of heat.
Well, there's a nice variety, I think, now in the back row with CJ. It's just his ball carrying ability. It's that bit different, you know, of footballing kind of 8 with Doris and Van der Flyer. There's a bit more probably football there. So I like the variety that's there now in the Irish back row.
Text in here on 53106 on Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk. The Saturday panel talking about rugby and the opening day of the Six Nations, 4:45 Ireland, Scotland at Lansdowne Road. There should be no back foot talk or pressure at this stage. We can only take the most recent form, i.e. the World Cup, as a barometer. Any sort of performance and a 1-point win would do for me. Tony and Turin Feckin. Tony, we've got to move on. If the Ireland team fail to win today, that will force Farrell to move onto the old and try the new next time, or probably move off the old and try the new next time from Tig and Mayo. But I think you have to have a blend, don't you? You can't just rip it all up.
It's interesting because I suppose we're looking nearly now, one eye nearly on the next World Cup. Well, what's coming through? And at 10, we've seen like that's where realistically Johnny isn't going to be the starting 10 option, whether it's Joey Carberry or Ross Byrne or Harry Byrne, his younger brother, Ben Healy in Munster. Is there any other out half that's probably...
Foley's coming through. Foley's good. Jack Hardy's still going to be around. I mean, he's gone through a bad patch, but he could come back.
Yeah, and then scrum half, again, like, realistically, Conor Murray's probably going to still be there, and then Cooney, whether his form dips, we have Craig Casey in Munster. Again, who else is there behind?
Would we expected, though, Caelan Doris and Ronan Ketter to be in the team, like looking back 2 to 3 years ago, would we have seen these people coming through?
Well, they were very young. They would have both been 18 2 or 3 years ago. So
are the cycles? Are we getting into the cycles? I mean, South Africa were a mess before Erasmus came back in. They won the World Cup. England were a disaster a couple of years ago. Should have won the World Cup. Messed up in the final. Should we be just concentrating more on the?
We can't look at those two countries because those two countries have the biggest playing pools. Like South Africa have something like 350 professionals just in Europe alone. Never mind, there was 6 professional franchises at home. Ireland don't have, and Scotland have even less of a depth. So I think we look more towards, and even New Zealand have a lot more players than us, but you look more towards their model of bringing players through. I mean, they brought in Sevu Reece and they switched Mwanga to 10 just before the World Cup, which was another late pivot. I mean, England pivoted late as well. They made Owen Farrell
captain. We can't do that, is what you're saying.
No, we can pivot late. We just can't change everything at the last minute. I think if he'd picked Cooney over Murray, a lot of people would have been happy this week. I think he made enough change, but he just stopped short of the big one that would have been kind of almost the bellwether selection. But I think if they win today, having given those two lads a debut, having brought back, put Larmour, and if Larmour plays well and Conway plays well and they counter-attack, I think if they counter-attack, a lot of people will be much happier with them because they never counter-attacked under Schmidt. It was a big frustration of mine. And then over the course of the year, with those fixtures I mentioned earlier, slowly but surely we bring in a few others. Max Deegan makes a debut here. A couple more come in. Jack O'Donoghue maybe. I think there's room for a few changes, but you can't, as you say, can't bring in 15 debutants and last year's under-20s and hope they're going to win the Six Nations. It's just not
age profile though, as well as experience. I think that's where we're kind of looking at, and when you look at just even the age profile of that starting 15 now, there's maybe 4 or 5 players that are probably realistically not going to maybe be able to perform at the same level they are now in come that World Cup year. And like you say there's it is form coming down the line, but from an age profile point of view, this squad now that we have should all be, some players will probably be even coming into peak age in around 27, 28, and for the next World Cup cycle, while but now I suppose we have a focus on getting the first win, being right for the World Cup draw, being in the best possible position. So it's important that guys, I don't see when you're talking about the dog, we're missing that dog. Johnny Sexton is that only kind of last real dog to me, who was probably there when he was vying with O'Gara for that 10 jersey, and so maybe those sort of characters aren't there, but do they need to be the way the calibre of player that's coming through the different provincial systems, namely I suppose the Leinster, the one at the minute?
Mark, when I was watching rugby growing up, I hated watching Ireland, Scotland, Murrayfield because we'd always lose. 85 to 2003, we never won there. When I see Wales, they won 4 Grand Slams the last in the new millennium. Scotland have only won 7 times in 50 matches on the road. But the Welsh and Scottish clubs wouldn't be seen as elite clubs in Europe. How has it worked for Wales internationally with the club system they have, but it's not worked for Scotland?
They seem to always manage to, those players, you watch them playing 1 week for their club sides and then they come together, and is it the power of that red jersey, something around it? They seem to kind of be able to be more than the sum of their parts in a way that Scotland have struggled with. Scotland haven't won anything since '99, the reigning Five Nations champions in perpetuity. And realistically, they've not threatened to either. So, there's been various mentality questions which feeds into what we're talking about, the away record as well, but they just haven't been able to kind of nail it for long enough.
So is it a case that it's nothing to do with away being going on the road, it's just they haven't been good enough?
I think, again, mentality comes into it, but, and mindset about what you do in preparation for away games and why is it so different from playing at Murrayfield where they have a much better record. But ultimately, yes, they haven't been good enough consistently on the day.
Do you think that'll be in the players' minds today?
It can't not be. I mean, we ask them about this before every away trip now. It's become a bit of a trope, and every time it's no, we do everything the same, and nothing comes into it. But it can't not when that's they haven't done it for so long. I can't see how it can not fail to be a part of the preparation.
I love watching Jordan Larmour play the game. Full back today, the back three. What's your kind of view on it?
It's still a question mark.
You were a winger.
Larmour, for me.
Why?
Still, I'm questioning, just on in the air. I think he can be got at. I'll probably be proved wrong. I hope to be proved wrong, but maybe that's why. I don't know. Maybe haven't seen enough of Addison, but I suppose for me, I like a full back who is that run pass option as well. Probably for Ireland we have Ringrose who can do that job, be that link man. But I think Larmour can be a bit more. He's more likely to make a dart himself, create something out of nothing himself. He has that magic, but I just question him in the air. So we'll see, whether Hastings puts the ball up. I mean, Maitland and Kinghorn, isn't it? They're big men now. So, if you're going to go after, I would go after Larmour anyway. Try and rattle him early.
For the first time in a while, Rory, we've got options at centre. Bundyaki ahead of Henshaw today, and that looked quite like a marginal call.
Yeah, definitely it was, and I think Joe Schmidt only really ever had the three of them to pick from once, and he tried to get all three of them into the team, and that went well. And we might see Henshaw 15 today. It looks like he's covering the 15 shirts, which will be interesting if it happens. So, Aki's never let Ireland down. I know he got a red in the World Cup, but that was pretty unfortunate. He's always been a really committed, he sets the physical tone, and when your coach who comes into the team is the former defence coach, he's probably going to go for those players who are going to win collisions. Robbie, I'd say, would be fairly stung by that decision. So if he does get a good run in the team, I'd expect to see him put his hand up as well. It's a pretty healthy position to be in. But Ringrose is one of the form players in Europe, and he's been good for Ireland. I think he can be great for Ireland, and if he gets the right ball in the right positions, he could really light this tournament up if it goes well for him.
We talked about, Mark, the neutral view of Ireland. What's your neutral view of England, France, Wales at the moment? Wales have just kicked off against Italy in Cardiff. Yeah,
it's good. I mean, it's a really interesting tournament all round with so many unknowns between changes in coaches, changes of assistant coaches, captains all over the place. I think England will pick up where they left off at the World Cup, and from their point of view, that would hopefully be the semi-final performance rather than the final. And I expect that they will win it without a Grand Slam. I can see them losing tomorrow.
No Grand Slam.
No
that's
Grand
the bet.
Slam. That's my call. I can see them losing either tomorrow or next week in Edinburgh, actually. Scotland have retained the Calcutta Cup for 2 years now, so the big thing will be trying to make that 3 in a row. Wales, after an era of such plenty again, I can see them. Yeah, I think they'll be thereabouts. Not too much turnover player-wise there, so again, I think they'll be in strong contention.
And Wales have taken the lead against Italy with a Dan Bigger penalty after 3 minutes, so Wales 3, Italy 0. Is it England's trophy for you, Ian?
It probably comes down to the World Cup final, the set piece, whether or not France can get after them there, and it'll be certainly makes for probably the match of the weekend, really, isn't it? With that French backline, if they get good ball, Lafacetao is just so impressive, and so really looking forward to seeing how that one unfolds.
What's your verdict on the overall tournament, Rory?
I think England can slam. I think they can win a lot. They've got continuity of coach. They've got the strongest squad. They've got probably the best collection of players who have a lot of work, a lot of experience, and they've got the cause. I mean, that World Cup final was a disaster. It kind of, because the Saracen story broke on the Monday, it kind of they never really went through the proper inquest, and you wonder whether the players have a bit of a hang up over it. But if they can win tomorrow, I can't I don't see them losing. Maybe I think Scotland can rattle them. I think Ireland can rattle them if they get the 2 wins under their belt beforehand. But I think with Owen Farrell leading that team, even without Billy Vunipola, I just think they're so much. They're better than everyone else, and they have that Saracens core. It's such a good strong core. I don't see anyone beating them.
Fascinating with France. Sean Edwards going in there now, Fabien Galthié, and a lot of young players. They are definitely looking towards 2023 here.
Yeah, it's like they're the control, aren't they? Like they're the when everyone points to you can't make massive changes. If it works for them, then we can all go, well, look at what France did. They've no one over 30 in the squad. A lot of talented players. They've won the last 2 under-20 World Cups. They've a huge amount of power. Like they've just got athletes, that really no one else apart from England in the whole tournament have. And if it clicks for them, they'll be very, very dangerous. So just you wonder whether the experience when they go on the road will be their undoing. But if it's still going when they play France is at 8 o'clock on
March the 14th, the day after Cheltenham, lads.
Yeah, 8 o'clock kickoff, which will be fun for all the the filing live on a Sunday will be fun. But if it's still going, then like they'll have done very well.
Will you get over to France or to England, Ian?
No, I don't think so. Now, no, not. Haven't actually gone to any of the matches abroad really. So,
does it when you're out of the game, when you're a player, do you just kind of almost have to have a bit of a distance between yourself and the game and being at matches, or like would you get there now today? If you were there now today, would you be like, would you lose it? Would you, if things are going wrong? Would you?
Yes. Well, I suppose it depends on like if you're kind of still playing as a player or you're just outside the match day squad. It was all. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't like, the guy I'm competing for, he's had a bad game, nice one, but the team won, but then when you're out of the game, I just appreciated I was able to enjoy the game a lot more. Just going to matches, and now I'm at a stage though it's where I'm really starting to appreciate having my weekends off. So regardless of what sport it is, I have that freedom of choice now.
How has the game changed physically? Your physio since you retired and now?
Probably seen more significant injuries at a younger age. ACL injuries at like kind of 14, 15, 16-year-olds, they're like kids nowadays, they're more physically developed by the time, like they're just kids that are just...
And is it out of sync with the way they should be developing?
Is it out of sync? Depends on the motives for why they're doing it. If it's from a performance point of view or for a looks point of view, the kind of way. There's plenty of rugby players that are, plenty of guys just going to the gym maybe because it's for a Saturday night and they play rugby or they play sport for one reason or another. I don't think it's a bad thing, but then the report that comes out during the week saying kids after 14 saying we can't run, jump, skip, kick ball, like we should, that's the priority really, as opposed to maybe, it's probably a balance, isn't it really, like all things, getting the balance right, going to the gym, developing physically, but at the same time playing as many sports, so you got all those natural skills like I say, run, hop, skip, jump.
Are we facing in 20 years, 30 years' time a real crisis with the injury situation in rugby, that the players that are playing now or have been playing the last few years are going to have serious problems?
I think actually I don't know, for me, my perspective is that I think the attitude now of a lot of players that are finishing up is like they looked after themselves a lot more probably when they were in the game. So physically they're maybe in better shape. And then maybe for some guys that they carry through that attitude after they retire, staying active, training and that. But no doubt, like the collisions that are happening now are probably a bit more significant than, say, a Willie Duggan generation. So inevitably you're going to be seeing kind of car crash kind of collisions, really.
Mark, you got your heart telling you Scotland are going to win today and you'll be going home, first victory at Lansdowne Road since 1998, but does the head say Ireland are going to win?
It does, unfortunately.
What's the verdict?
Yeah, I can see a 10 to 15 point Ireland win today.
Rory, who, why and by how many?
24-10 to Ireland.
I went for that
in the paper this morning, so I better stick with it. I just think Ireland will be too strong up front. and have a few more weapons out wide as well.
How many tries? What are we talking about? 2 to 3 tries in that?
3 and a penalty, I think.
3 and a
how I
penalty.
did it in my head.
Ian Dowling, who, why, and by how many?
I'll go 28-14. 2 tries.
The handicap is there. Just to finish, Rory, the under-20s won last night. Of course, they're defending the Grand Slam, and the women playing tomorrow. Expectations around both parties for the Six Nations?
It's always hard to know with the 20s. I mean, Wales lost to Italy last night. They didn't look great for the first 20 minutes, but they came out after half time. They have a serious pack this year. A lot of times you've got exciting backs. This year they've got the biggest 20s pack that I can remember. They're defending Grand Slam champions. I guess they'll be trying to get that as well, but going to England and France, always very strong at this level. And then the women, I think if they win their home games, they'll have done quite well, because England and France are just so much better than everyone else. But I think if they can beat Scotland and Wales this year, it sets them up nicely, because really their focus this year is that World Cup qualifying campaign, which I think is in September. They've got a big summer ahead and a big autumn ahead, which will have massive ramifications in the women's game for the next 4 or 5 years. So if they can get a bit of momentum behind them and you know, blend. There's been a lot of new faces and a lot of change in the women's team under Adam Griggs. If they can get some momentum behind them, that'll be a job well done in this year's Six Nations.
Ruaidhri O'Connor, Mark Palmer, Ian Dowling, thanks so much for coming in today, lads.
Cheers for having us.
Six Nations, 2 hours and 15 minutes away from Scotland's visit to Dublin to play Ireland in the Six Nations opening round. Wales leading Italy now 6-0 in Cardiff. Dan Biggar with another penalty. It's finished in the Premier League 2-2 between Leicester and Chelsea. Back in a moment, 53106.
Off the ball on News Talk. Lunchtime Live.
Noel is on the line. Noel, you yourself are in remission from a gambling addiction.
You have kids?
I have kids, I have 4.